Is there anyone here? Please, if you can hear me, I'm lost. Hello? Please, help me.
It was Halloween night, 2012. It was exactly what you would expect the night to look like. Darkness overpowered all light. In fact, if it wasn't for the full blood red moon outside, you would barely be able to see in front of you at all. It was deafeningly quiet all around. All that could be heard was the occasional laughter of young trick-or-treaters running amok across town and the eerie sounds of the night. Halloween was almost over. All of the treats had been eaten and all of the tricks had been tricked. However, there were still a few terrors left in store before the clock struck midnight and the cold winds of November became a reality. For some, Halloween isn't about dark magic and all of the evil that is associated with Devil's Night. For some, the fun of trick-or-treating, dressing up in costumes, wearing a creepy mask, putting a graveyard in their front lawn for decorations, and watching your favorite horror film is the true spirit of Halloween. The simple Hallmark version, if you will. For two Coloradans in particular, this was the case. After a long night of passing out candy, trick-or-treating themselves, despite maybe being too old to do so, and dishing out a few scares across their neighborhood, a father and his son decided to cap off their favorite holiday with a walk through the trails nearby and a few pumpkin spice beers. This father and son had always been close friends as well, and for them, this was their first time ever sharing an adult beverage together. Halloween was always a particularly special evening for the two, because the father's birthday was just a few days into November, so not only were the two celebrating All Hallows Eve, but it was a birthday party as well. The son had recently turned 21, and the two were looking forward to enjoying the rite of passage type of moment and perhaps getting a little buzz under the full moon. With just under an hour to spare until Halloween's end, the two set out on their quest of fun and shenanigans. They were both still half wearing their costumes and half wearing their winter clothes, a thing that only a true Coloradan would understand. The son was wearing clown face paint, obnoxiously loud clown shoes, and his favorite hoodie. The father, back in his normal attire of sweatpants and a jacket, but wearing a scarecrow mask. As the two walked the trails, they passed by a few kids rushing home because they knew they had stayed out later than they were supposed to and were in big trouble. A suspicious group of teenagers that were clearly up to no good, and even a late-night jogger with his dog who looked like the type of person that probably didn't even know it was Halloween or simply didn't care. Once the two got deep enough into the woods, they figured it was finally time to crack open that first drink. With the end of a lighter, the father popped the cap off of one and handed it to his son. The scent of pumpkin spice and ale hit the cold night's air. Then he did the same for himself. With a loud clank, the two cheersed and sat down at a nearby bench to enjoy their festivities. For the next half hour, many deep conversations were had. "I'm proud of the man you've become," the father said, and the son expressed his joy that he had such a great dad to not only teach him about life, but to also be his best friend. The two had shared many fond memories together, and this was a time of reminiscence and laughter. After a while, the two began to notice the impending darkness and the fact that it was so silent you could hear the ashes of the father's cigarettes hit the ground. The family had a flight to catch in the morning, so the father suggested they make their way back home and catch some sleep before they woke up with a headache. So, they threw their bottles in the nearby trash can, save the last one that they intended to share for their journey home. The duo joked about things such as the full moon, the darkness, and attempted to scare each other with a loud boo as they journeyed back. The buzz had set in, and the excitement from a day of Halloween celebration was still very much in their spirit. They were about halfway home and almost to the point where the trails ended and became the beginnings of their neighborhood streets. That is when they saw it. "What is that glowing green light?" the son asked his father. "Yeah, real funny," Dad replied. "You aren't going to scare me with that one." Then the dad looked over and noticed it himself. "Oh," he chuckled, "you aren't kidding." A moment of silence swept over them. "It's probably just something from a construction site. I noticed some machines and stuff towards the river as we came in," Dad said. "Or maybe it's some Salem witches performing a Halloween ritual," the son said in a dark and sarcastic way. The two laughed and looked at each other. "Well, obviously there's only one way to find out," they both basically said in unison. Taking another sip or two and passing the bottle back and forth for a minute, then the two set off towards the light at the not so far off distance. As the dark green light came closer and closer into view, the boys realized two things. First, wherever it was slightly downhill and almost lying at the mouth of the river. Second, the light was not only bigger than they originally thought, but much brighter as well. Standing at the top of the hill, the son thought about turning back, as he did not want to hike down the hill, and he definitely did not want to get wet. However, his father fearlessly leapt forward, and the son was not about to leave his side. So down the hill they went as the light got closer and closer. As they trekked, construction gear was scattered across the hill, and this confirmed the father's suspicion. "See, it's probably the light from a generator or something from a construction site. Nothing spooky about it. Although you had me for a second with it being Halloween and all." "Yeah, I guess you were right," the son responded, coming to the realization. They were this far, but they were not going to stop. They were getting to the bottom of the hill to see exactly what it was. The silence of Sam Hain crept into the night until the boys finally reached the light at the bottom of the hill. It was so bright it was like staring into the sun at midnight. It was impossible to see what the object really was. That's when it happened. The wind suddenly picked up profusely. The light surged even brighter and began to come out of the ground, shaking the nearby leaves and raising the tides of the river even higher. The light continued surging even brighter and rising higher and higher into the sky. "What is that?" the son yelled. "I don't know, but I think we should leave," his dad said back. They began to take a few steps backward and turn around, and the ominous light surged brighter than the stars itself, and with a deafening boom, everything in the area was covered in blinding lights and the sound as if a cannon had just gone off. And then, nothing. The silence of Halloween night returned. The light retreated to the darkness, and it was gone entirely. But something else happened that night. The boys were now nowhere to be seen themselves. The light had swallowed them up and taken them to wherever it came from. Early that morning, the mother sat up waiting for her family to return, but they never did. She called 911, and an extensive search began. Police, dogs, helicopters, concerned citizens, and everything else. The boys' empty bottles, cigarette butts, a scarecrow mask, and one clown shoe were all that was ever recovered. However, no bodies were ever found. The mystery of what happened to this young father and his son was broadcast on every news channel across the state and eventually the country. The entire nation was enamored with this story. Maybe it was tugging at the heartstrings of family across America. Maybe the mystery of Halloween is what kept everyone so intrigued. But everyone in America knew the story of these two, and everyone was looking for them. Unfortunately, despite everyone's relentless efforts, the two were never found, and the mystery of what exactly happened to them remains just that, a mystery to this very day.